Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I am your host, Nick Shutt. Happy to have my friend Josh Thiel with me to here today. Josh, how are you, sir?
I'm great today.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. I know you're very busy, but for those that don't have the opportunity or have the privilege of knowing you yet, man, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you got here, man?
Yeah, so it's a long short story. So born and raised in West Lafayette, Indiana, on Purdue's campus, where I realized and was awake enough to realize that life is largely about who you surround yourself with. I was really lucky and born on Purdue's campus here and in a high school in the middle of campus, tons of super smart kids, professors' kids, and I'm like, man, in life I had to keep surrounding myself with the best people. All right, so that kind of led me. I went to West Point after that. Luckily, enough to get an appointment there. From there, did a little bit of time in infantry and reconnaissance, then went special operations again. Like, gonna surround myself with the best people. That's where to go. That's the way to have the biggest impact, right? My brother was about 5 years younger. I knew he was gonna come up in the force, deploy to. Hey, the bigger impact I can make strategically with the special operations team, the more I can protect people just like him,
Hmm
18-year-old kids just across America, right?
hmm Absolutely, man. So what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I got out after I was had the pleasure and the honor of commanding at multiple levels, a lot of different operations like Papua New Guinea, Malaysia, a few to Iraq, a few to Afghanistan, Philippines during the Zamboanga uprising and Typhoon Yolanda, lots of humanitarian relief. Um, Korea, just kind of all over the place, like a storied great career, got to command all over the place. Drifted heavier into tech when I was at Naval Postgraduate School. Did an internship with Palantir for about 6 months. Love affair of super empowering people with technology.
Hmm
I just love it. I think people are first, but I love to see everybody in a Tony Stark Iron Man suit if I can get them there.
Yeah.
So I started having some custom software made and started judging hackathons for our special operations community. Ultimately got out in 2021. My kids were still young. Like, yeah, I'd already kind of missed a few years with deployments, but it was going well. So 37 countries, 32 states, no one had cookies as good as my mom. So I
Yeah.
moved to West Lafayette. I'm a block away. I can get all the cookies I want, though I'm not sure I need them. I've got all the right role models here, for my kids and good family. When you're in a community where you don't have to lock your door and the neighbors all know your kids, like that's just a great place to be. So ended up back here, did a year in supply chain AI for an executive internship while they rebuilt some of me at Duke Medical Center. If you're old enough, you know RoboCop. So they
Mhm.
RoboCoped me out for a year.
You go.
Did a startup essentially with a buddy who was a Princeton psychology major, high school buddy. That was for mental health. So I built all the backside technology for that. Got hired away by Heinz Consulting to stand up a AI center of excellence. So have kind of continued down the track for that. With Heinz, they're proposal writers, they're capture people.
hmm
It's a lot of unique people with a lot of skills to make compelling proposals.
hmm
But I saw the opportunity that, wait, we can give each of them super empowerment with generative AI. Okay, that's where they had me at my passion. They wrote me in, and here I am in Heinz Consulting. Yep.
That's amazing. Really amazing. Amazing career. Thank you for your service and going off and fighting the scary so a lot of folks don't have to. That's amazing, man. Love what you've done. And today we're going to talk about something that I know is near and dear to your heart. We're going to talk about intellectual property theft, and how, we America as a country are being exhausted right now. Can
Mhm.
you go ahead and kind of set the stage for people and kind of explain what this is and like why it's a problem at a fundamental level?
Yeah, so let's even take one step farther and back and go to a
Mhm.
term that not a lot of people know or think about. If you haven't been in geostrategic politics, then that's DIME, diplomatic, information, military, and economic, right? When you're doing things in the world, when you're protecting your company, your country, sorry, you've got to have all those. And some countries mix those together better than others for larger effect, right? The backbone of America, really, since World War II, as I think you mentioned to me before, is everybody's production capability was gone after World War II. We are the only ones left. Jump started us and really into superpower level because of the production ability, right? The ability to create the GDP, right? The economics is the backbone of anything. You can't afford the big military if you don't have that, right?
Mhm.
And so when you're looking at this thing, it all comes back to economics, right? And I was an economic major at school. I love it, but it underpins everything else. And if you want to be truly powerful, you don't start with just going after the military, right? You don't run down the street and get a gun. The powerful person on the street next to me is the guy that like owns six businesses, right? He can hire 80 people with guns, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so it all comes back to economics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, we are and have been the economic superpower of the world, military superpower of the world. And so mm, as we have continued to grow and push the bounds here with technology and technological growth, are other countries like just stealing our tech to, boost themselves? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so I think everybody's got the old Cold War Mission Impossible stuff in their head, right? With you're stealing the nuke secret or something like that, right? But really in the last 20, 30 years, China has taken industrial espionage to a whole nother level because they realized, hey, I don't have to steal the military secret. If I can steal all the economic secrets, and economics, it underpins all the real power, as we just discussed,
Mhm.
that's where you can truly build a base. And you mentioned the word exhaust in America. I use that a bit. Let's take, for example, my table that I'm sitting on right now.
Mhm.
I handmade myself with some reclaimed wood, right? And let's just tell you that I went through about three different types of saws at Home Depot, right? I went through a lot of iterations, wasted a lot of wood, wasted a lot of belt sanders, a lot of money. There's like the carnage of eight of these sitting in the corner that didn't pan out.
Absolutely.
Well, after you're done and you figure it out, if you take that product list and you take the design or the blueprints of that to somebody else, they didn't waste 4 months of their life and they didn't spend like probably six times as much money, right? That's just sheer exhaustion of how much it exhausted me to make this, and someone else can steal that. Now, if you take that to any other level, whether that be some new microchip, whether you take it to the agricultural sector with making new corn hybrids that are resistant to X, or can do X in environmental conditions, right? Whether you take that as sheer production plant, right? You can exhaust America because they don't have all that debt of all the waste, right? So when you jumpstart into this with no debt or you're stealing their best ideas, they're very, very, very good at copying and replication, right? If I make something new within 3 months and I made it black and white, cool new thing for my desktop, in 3 months it'll have one more widget and it'll be in six different colors and I can buy it on Amazon and it's
Mhm.
getting produced in China, right? They're mass experts at replication, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so how does this affect, how does this affect, not just individual companies, right? So and you can pick any number of them, right? Whether it's like a mining company, because I know that like a lot of our like rare mineral extraction and refinement is done in China now. It was done here, and I know that part of the deals that were negotiated was that, with moving all these mines and production facilities to China, was that we weren't just gonna like we were gonna teach them how to do it our way and give them our abilities, right? So how does that individual deal? But like if you're like a Cisco and you're building a new firewall, right? Like a hardware device, or you're an open AI and you're going out and developing and doing a lot of this R&D work on large language models and how to make them better and how can this affect just individual companies first, but also our ability to compete on the global stage as a country.
Yeah, so there's a few things here. I'll unpack the first part first, right? And so let's just take a sheer price of a product, right? And if it cost us $1 to make, right? But factored into that is $1 billion of R&D cost, right? And then those are blueprints are taken out, just like my table, to another country, to another corporation inside China, and they can produce it without the debt that they've got to pay back on the overhead. They can sell it for 75 cents, right? And their profit margin is probably bigger, right? It's just the base economics of the cost of development, the cost of setup. Everybody thinks with China, hey, it's cheap labor, cheap labor, cheap labor. That's why they can do it cheaper. That's a factor. But as we move higher tech, more R&D cost, more complicated technology. There's a lot of other countries that are doing a lot more laborious factory intensive production right now. China is moving up the scale in technology production. And one of the ways they can still defeat us there, it's not the labor cost anymore, it's the R&D cost, right? With the
Mhm.
industrial, right? I'll give you an example of how prolific it is. You can look up Confucius centers, right? And you can almost find one on every single campus in the United States. right? And it's supposed to be culture, so the international students they can come there and they can stay connected to their Chinese culture, right? Make no mistake about it. That is the epicenter of at the university level,
Mhm.
um, industrial espionage, IP espionage, right? And they're all tied back to the mothership, right?
Mhm.
They're on every campus, right? And that's just one like very clear, readily present example. It's so well known. We had a lot of ethnic um, conflict here on the campus. Who was it against? It was Chinese versus Chinese. And you had the state-sponsored students and the capitalists, right? People with money students.
Mhm.
And those were the two fighting each other, right? And they were fighting each other because, like, hey, you're stealing my project ideas and sending them back, right? Because you know them. And it was, and then the other side was saying, hey, you're saying America's great and the mothership is bad.
Mhm.
They're reporting people back to China. And literally, we had people on this campus whose parents and assets, millions of dollars getting seized and finding themselves in prison. And then they couldn't go back because
That,
they would have been arrested too, because you have the Confucius Chinese nationalists sponsored by government
mhm.
people reporting on the capitalist students. And we had literally fights and people going to hospitals over that, right? So that tension, both in their own state and the risk of it and what's happening is all very, very real. Right.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's also creating violence in American schools, right?
Yeah.
At a level, and that's, I mean, that's, but like I think that it is the reporting a reporting of it in and of itself that is like a Chinese culture thing more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Is it about that's their internal cultural differences coming to the fore in a way that probably wouldn't happen back in China because I think that's more locked down there.
Mhm.
It's really fascinating though. So is China the big one, or is like does Russia do this too? Who are the big
Yeah, yeah. Let me finish up like one more
Sorry,
piece,
go ahead.
and then I'll and
Yeah.
then I'll skip over to Russia, right? So you mentioned supply chain control, things like that, right? Like, we'll say rare earth metals is an easy example, right? So it's super dirty to process them, right? It's something you honestly, if you can avoid having it in your own country, you probably don't want it. But guess what? You need it, right? For magnets made of rare earth metals, there's about 9,000 pounds, open source information, 6,000 pounds on no, 9,000 pounds on a submarine and about 600 pounds in every F-35 fighter jet, right?
Mhm.
Like you got to have it. Like you can't make any more, right?
Right.
And when we see diversity of a supply chain, or we're worried about that, and we see four different ways, okay, don't worry, we're diverse. We've got one that's coming from China in the factory that does it here in China, but we got two other places, right? Well, it's way, way craftier than that, right? If you tear apart those supply chains, you're going to see, oh, wait, this supply line here, the mine is in country X, owned by the foreign adversary. Oh, this one here, the actual staging site for them where it's produced, it's in country X, right?
Mhm.
Um, the factory may be here. So, and then this last one, oh, guess what? All the financing is tied to third-party oligarchs that are actually tied, and they could shut it down. So in an instant, they can still shut down.
Mhm.
It's very opaque, right? But it's very, very systematic. And, that's an example of we've just been watching it happen, letting it happen. In this case, not watching it happen. And COVID, illuminated a lot of that, right? There's a lot of great stuff being done by companies. They're helping out with that. Things like S bombs, like what's an S bomb? Does it blow up, right? Or what's a bomb? Does it blow up, right? So a bill of materials, right? For a product, being able to trace that out in the global supply chain. And SBOM is a software bill of material. And you
Mhm.
probably know that inside a system as complex as like we'll say a new plane, that they actually subsource out just like you do parts, pieces of that code to get developed in a lot of places.
Yeah.
That's the software bill of materials, essentially we call it an SBOM. And even with that, you're getting exposed and people can see it in, malicious code, things like that, right? On the Russia side, Russia is way less than the supply power, right?
Mhm.
The people that have factories, they frankly don't have the geostrategic positioning based on, how high they are. They operate off too, right? It's energy,
Mhm.
right? Energy hostaging Europe whenever they want to get something they want. Ukraine has nothing to do with Ukraine, just like the three invasions of Georgia. It all
Mhm.
had to do with critical supply lines and supply nodes so they could control Western Europe, which is their best defense, right? Really smart. The second thing is cyber. They're like raw cyber deep cyber, right? A very, very complicated web of non-state actors who are definitely state-sponsored actors to do things to us, right? You go back to I'm looking for a good example. Things like the Colonial Pipeline collapse in 2021, where it
Mhm,
was like the whole pipeline system shut down for like a few days.
mhm,
It looks like a ransom, looks like some hostage. It's also people getting their reps in, right? Like the US military is really good because we do war games all the time in the desert and in Louisiana. Well, in cyber, if you want to do mass scale attacks and shut down systems and be able to destroy people's power grids, you got to get the reps in, right?
yeah,
Those are all tiny, tiny reps, right?
mhm,
And they love to do those tiny reps on Poland and other countries too. It just doesn't make the US news because we're so self-absorbed.
yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely true. We are the most, I think if there was a self-absorption championship, we would be number one for sure. But no, but that's fascinating. So China's a massive player. China's number one. Russia's another one. Are there any other like huge players that are involved in this, IP theft of specifically it's America where that they're coming to because we do so much. Do we spend
Yeah.
more R&D? Do we have more breakthroughs? Spend more on R&D? Do we have more breakthroughs? Is that why we're being targeted?
Yeah, that's why we're targeted. It's the way to get the edge, right? And I would
Mhm,
say Russia's doing a lot less, IP theft. They're just leveraging the tools that they have at their disposal. You've
mhm,
got other countries using their advantages, right? Not IP theft, but Iran is masters of basically growing networks inside the Middle East. Anywhere there's a Shia presence, right? They're going to have a network and proliferate out. They want the caliphate back, right? If you know what the
mhm,
caliphate is, it's full control or government over all Muslim population, basically spreading from India all the way to the edge of Morocco, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So they're using their effect, which is cultural, very complex family networks, which they understand very well. The IP theft, though, you really got to throw it, right on China's doorstep right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how have we, to your point, we've known about this happening for a long time, and I think in a lot of cases, like with rare earth minerals, we've helped it, right? And we've helped it along. How have we adapted to combating this?
Great, great question. And you're probably going to hear silence, right? We just don't. One of our superpowers, and I'm a hardcore superpower person for diversity. Diversity is America's superpower, right?
Hmm.
And we get so much more gain out of, all of the great talent that comes here and does do discoveries. We have an incredible system set up to support and take a brilliant mind, right? And those can be anywhere, regardless of country of origin, race, even economic status, what you're born into. There's brilliant minds. They come here and we have a system that helps them flourish, right? Not just for America, but for humanity, right? We're one of
Yes.
the most benevolent hegemons ever to kind of pass through, or one would say the most benevolent. And there's a great Hans Bricks, I believe. I'll have to go back and look his name. Hans Rollins, that's it. He does there's a great video online of worldwide prosperity under the age of America, right? That if you don't believe America's pretty good, run a pretty good game here for about 50 years for the world, that may change your mind, right? So because of these core beliefs and values we don't have a way we haven't figured out a way to protect those
Hmm.
well also and enable those, really let those flourish while doing the protection. And you could say that's the same for the whole internet, right? We created this mass amount of space out there out of nothing that didn't exist,
Hmm.
but we didn't tax a penny on every email sent. We're not taxing the servers the same way we would land. So you don't have a digital or cyber police force nearly as big as what you need it to be, right? You
Hmm.
created all the space and didn't find a way to protect it, right? So it's kind of the same way with the IP game. How do you get all the benefit, but then protect against the negative, right? A lot of cybersecurity companies out there that are coming to the forefront, but when we get into individual rights, right,
Hmm.
comes really, really tricky. And then who takes jurisdiction? Let's say you got a foreign national here who's studying, who's stealing, or they're in a company and they're stealing from that company. Is it the company's issue? Is it the FBI's issue? Well, if they're not a US citizen yet. Like, is it the CIA, but it's on domestic soil? It's the local problem. And
Hmm.
the kind of company it's for you to figure out but they don't have any enforcement agency. They don't have judges. They can't go to jail. They've got some internal monitoring capabilities, and maybe they fire you. Maybe they just isolate you, but most of the time they just don't know, right? And they're not willing to give up access to the talent
Mm-hmm.
and eliminate all the talent to find like the one or two people that are nefarious in the system, right? So it's really how do you weed out like a very tentacled thing inside an organ
Mm-hmm.
when it's kind of touching everything without hurting the organ, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. How would you approach it?
So, I mean, I think we need a lot more internal oversight and security over it, right?
Or
And
is
so
when you
I,
say it, do you mean all R&D or like government backed R&D, or I mean, can you define that?
I would say you need a new agency, and I'm all about like tearing down big government, but we have created so much space here, and it's such a problem. You got the CIA and the FBI to defend us that really focuses on the national defense side and the national secret side. You need an agency for industrial espionage, right? And it's got to be a place where the companies can come. It's got to be capabilities. There has to be judges that understand this, right? We probably need some laws and projections tied into this based on the data you see once you start increasing the policing.
Mhm.
And I was laughing the FBI. There's a great case out there that you can read about, and it was on it was either the corn or the rice one, right? But the guy like stole this rice that there was about 100 patents on,
Mhm.
75 million in R&D, and they did get prosecuted, right? One of the rare cases for agricultural espionage,
Mhm.
and they got 28 months in prison,
That's it
right?
for
That's it,
stealing
right?
essentially $75 million worth of work, right? Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. That was split over to other countries, right? Specifically, this one was China, right? And I mean, that guy's probably going to get, deported after he gets out of prison, and then, he's going to be a sung hero there, right? Well worth the
Mhm.
2,800 in that system, right? Mission accomplished.
Absolutely.
So you've really got to, I think you need an agency. You need the relationships between the agencies and the corporations.
Mhm.
You need the laws set in place. You need judges that understand that piece. You need lawyers probably that understand it.
Yep.
And you've got to have the will that it's okay to do this, to investigate this, right? To actually prosecute these people, right? And they need to be held accountable, right? If you are inside Boeing and you were
Mhm.
in industrial, like we need the monitoring, right? You need enough FBI people and monitors and cybersecurity people to monitor. We know a lot of them who they are already. We just don't have any capability to do anything about it. But they need to go to prison for like ever, just like a foreign national spy that tried to sneak into a submarine plant. That guy would go to jail for like 30 years, right? It should be no different because the impact overall, after you put all those pennies in the jar, right? Pebbles in the jar, the water rises. The impact is economic, and that is the root of all of power, right?
Right. Yeah, it's about yeah. You can't have any of the other, as you mentioned, anything else without the economy to back it, right? And so so this is just so we know this is a problem, or like as a nation, we know it's a problem. We're all on the same page that it's a problem. We've known it's a problem for a long time, I would assume, probably over 20 years.
Mhm.
This has been going on for a long time, and we're just not doing anything about it. Is that pretty much the
That
bottom line up front that it's like
that is absolutely right.
Mhm.
They're saying companies, it's your job to police yourself and take care of yourself. And companies are like, I need the talent or I don't know what's happening because I don't have those capabilities. And
Mhm.
so either they know, turn a blind eye, but no one's taking the action, right? And we haven't set up the infrastructure, people, process, technology, right?
Mhm.
And in this case, laws, right? When I'm talking policy, right? Um, to address it. And then we have to like truly get aggressive. And a lot of people probably need to get investigated, prosecuted, and go to jail, right?
And they should. They
Yeah.
should, with this, because I mean, corporate secrets. I know, like, for instance, Coca-Cola has a massive security apparatus that they
Mhm.
have, but, that they can afford, right? Like, to be clear, they're a massive organization, been around for a long time, but, OpenAI 5 years ago, before they probably couldn't have afforded and that's just one of the many companies out there that are small that are doing incredibly cutting edge work and cutting edge research that don't have the resources, the ability to police this internally, right? Uh,
The game has changed too, right? So One of my mentors who worked for, we'll say, a large vehicle company, right? For construction equipment type things, mining, right? They because the cost, right? 20 years ago, they set up plants in China, and every time he flew over, he ran like 8 plants all over Asia,
Mhm.
and flew with the thumb drives with the blueprints for the new thing. Well, that may have worked for like 10 years, right? To
Yeah.
protect the IP a little bit, right? But now everything is digital. It's got to be connected. We had the internet then when he was doing this, right? But they, air gapped the facility, tried to protect it. It just can't be protected that way anymore, right? And companies need to, I mean, they need to look at some of their insecurity as well as where they put the plant, right? What are the relationship between that country and some of the nefarious countries out there as well, right? But how you protect it is becoming different. And I'd love to switch into some discussion on Gen AI too to
Yeah, man.
discuss.
No, I was gonna ask, how have the recent developments over the last couple of years changed this game? Um,
Yeah.
for sure. I'd love to talk about that, man.
Yeah, so Gen AI has become kind of one of my focus areas the last 2 years because if you don't know what generative AI is, it's generation of text, right? It's AI that can take things, piece it together, uses natural language processing, right? Start to write like a human. We've all seen Copilot or you've seen ChatGPT. Your kids are probably cheating on the side, trying to use it rather than think for themselves, right? Which is a whole nother podcast we should do. But Gen AI is generation, right? And it also works from scraping and reading and understanding things out there. It's really, really good at this point for finding things, like as a research assistant, because it can read it like a human to know contextually that that's the thing you're looking for, far more than your Boolean search, right? So there's a silly example, right, that I use, and I'm like, if you and I just met, and I started to yell at you, and I was saying, Starbucks,
Mhm.
Starbucks now,
Yeah.
Starbucks late plane, Starbucks late plane,
Mhm.
caffeine now, Starbucks late plane, right? That's essentially how we talked to Google
Mhm.
before, right?
Yeah.
And then it became, we started some initial prompting, but you had to be really kind of good at prompting, right? And you couldn't like put prompts together. So it would have been like, hey, Nick, hey, I just got in on a late flight. I know you're from here. This conference looks really great. I really want to get over there, but I need some caffeine so desperately. I've got to get one quick. It starts in 10 minutes. You're from here. Hey, if you show me where it is, I'll buy your coffee. And you're kind of like, okay, I understood you, but wow, that's a lot, right? And I'm a little bit intimidated. I may not get the response right, or I may just be too scared and walk away. That's kind of where we were for prompting a few years ago. And now you can, string prompts. So it's, hey, I know you're from here, right? Work for the same company, conference. Like, I got in so late last night. I need some caffeine. Like, and you'd be like, oh man, yeah, I do too. Okay, yeah, we're conversational back and forth. Hey, is there a Starbucks nearby? You're from here. It's like you're like, no, but there's a vending machine with some energy drinks. Oh, cool. And you
Mhm.
can find the thing you really need, which is the caffeine, right? It may not even be the coffee, it may not be the Starbucks, right? But you're
Mhm.
really solutioning, right? You can solution now with the AI and the Gen AI, right? And that's the big change, right? So when we look at this though, and you're feeding those questions in and you're getting responses back, or let's say, because I've been doing this a lot, we take an idea, right? I take a professor, a bunch of his idea, and show him how to write a journal article in an hour, which he would have spent 3 months on.
Mhm.
And he puts his ideas for the journal article in there and then generates it. All of that gets fed back in the machine and will be discoverable,
Mhm.
right? So if you think about this from a nation state standpoint, we'll say from an R&D standpoint, there's so many things going on the web. It's making theft of ideas, whether it's person to person or actually IP out on the web. And then there's a difference between two words, which you got to understand in this world, right? Information and intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Information are bits and pieces that are brought together. Intelligence is when they're synthesized together to make things you can determine, drive actions off of, right? Larger insights, right?
Mhm.
So if you got AI on the one end, or technology, or tons and tons of people on one end to string together and scrape all that for IP, you can start to assimilate little difference of different pieces of projects
Mhm.
and it's way easier. I can do it from the mothership and not even have to come over here and have a person in the lab or in the factory or
Right.
the output. I can tell you like 18 companies here from Rolls-Royce to Raytheon who have offices on campus, and they're probably doing one piece of the puzzle It's probably outsourced down into professors who are doing a piece of the research. They're using the open source internet or some Gen AI to help them write the thing faster. And then bam, like you're stringing together here with here, all over Raytheon's enterprise to take ideas and steal IP, right? Or reassemble them, right?
Absolutely. How would you and that is only if they're using generative AI that is attached to the connected to the internet, right? Like if it's not
Yeah.
connected to the regular internet, then they wouldn't be able to go out and find that, correct?
That is true. So we can talk about domains in a second, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So you can imagine for Intel in the proposal world where I work, if
Hmm.
there's a government proposal to make the new widget for a destroyer,
Hmm.
right? And I'm writing the proposal to win the bid so my company can write on that. And I'm like, man, I really want to do this faster. I really want to make it to my kid's soccer game tonight. And you're doing some search. And if it's open source or if it touches anything at all, and it's not a closed domain, right? Which gets to the word domain, it's going to be out there. So the foreign nation states, right? Foreign states can assemble intent, they can assemble direction of a company, the capabilities we're trying to create, which allows them to accelerate and do counters, or there's bits and pieces of it out there to accelerate the counters. So whether it's just straight corporate espionage or whether it's for government, the Gen AI is out there, right? So we talk about this word domain, right? What is a domain, right? And when I mean domain aware AI, I mean, I don't want it to go out to the internet. I only want it to generate off of what I put in.
Hmm.
So let's say I've got an instance on Azure Government Cloud approved by the US government and monitored, GCC IL5, all the certifications. And I take past proposals. I take from all my wicked smart engineers out there with SMEs, right? Subject matter experts. I pull that information in, pull my marketing material, and then I sell it. Hey, answer my prompts. It will only generate from that closed circle.
Hmm.
And that generation doesn't get fed back into the model. It may update it so it knows how I think more, but it doesn't go out to the web anymore.
Right.
Right. So when you look at that, that's a domain. You essentially have a domain for Gen AI. All the higher end Gen AI companies like Rohirrim, AutoGen, Voltron, Procurement Sciences, right? They've got like some degree of security with closed domains so it can generate more effectively.
Hmm.
It also sounds like me, or it sounds like the company, your differentiators, right? So, you could probably think about a world just like we don't mix our emails in with everybody else's emails.
Hmm.
Or imagine how hard it would be to find an email if there was 10,000 people on there,
Yep.
right? You want? That's the easy analogy for like, oh yeah, I might not get back the email that I want because there's so many on there, 10,000 people's emails. Well, when you got a domain for generation of text, it's the same way. It's not the World Wide Web generating, it's my stuff generating. There's probably a future in which we all have our own domains for generative AI.
Yep.
And literally, it's AI that's going to help my kid, right? Andrew, who he's been interfacing with it in his domain, just like his email and his Facebook forever. And so it truly knows how Andrew thinks and what he wants more and helps retrieve from his own things he's created faster and quicker. So we're probably moving to that age, and that will be a safer age, just like putting your emails in with everybody else wouldn't be very safe either, right?
I also think that it'd be fascinating to have uh, like an agent that was with, or like an AI that's with you your entire life that you know that you can
Yeah.
talk to, right? That knows you, that knows that, oh yeah, you were not doing well that Tuesday afternoon in class, and so you probably didn't pay attention so much. So I took notes, whatever, right? Like something
Yeah.
like that, or like you're really good at this part of something, but like the details is not good. So like, well, you need to step up on the detail side. Super interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
super. I mean, it does bring up a lot of like infosec concerns relating to personal data.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something, yeah, something else. But like one thing I did want to touch on, you were talking about, folks using generative AI to essentially, they put all the information in and bad actors are able to get that information out. Are they getting it out just via prompting? Is it you just asking the system the right questions and it'll
Yeah.
spit back what, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it right back. I mean, I can. Um, this isn't perfect for national security, right? But
Mhm.
I helped field a generative AI platform here and test one on a campus, on a few different campuses and universities now. And one of the things that moved the needle on the initiative was we had a professor and he thought he had an initial original idea.
Hmm.
and he then said, generate this, and it gave him more ideas and said,
Hmm.
I have a paper and this is a great idea. It took my idea and helped me write it faster. I just kept prompting with it. And then he took the overall output and we ran it through Google Scholar and we found a journal article that was 95% the same. Right
Wow.
now, what's the risk for that? Like, risk his tenure track, credibility of himself in the field, credibility of the university that he's working at, credibility of the research, anything else he's produced naturally that is really high quality is suddenly in doubt, right? But that's where, um, the information is absolutely out there and being pulled, right? And I can assemble things from other people for greater effect too. Now, the ability to create, you can pull in a lot of people's different ideas better, right? Like you can, the ability, the acceleration of creation is a positive thing as well. So what do you want out there? What do you not?
Yeah.
That becomes an interesting line for the body of knowledge, academia research versus things that tie into eventual corporate IP, right? Um, I'll give you a really weird one,
Please.
right? This is gonna blow your mind, right?
Yeah.
So I was talking to a professor and he was talking about I was like, so are the students using now? Should we move this from just the research centers in this fielding of a domain aware Gen AI to the whole university and students? And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I don't know if the undergrads are producing the things that could be used, but right now to get around our plagiarism or bots that are like checking papers, right, which has been around for a while now. You can the
Yeah.
universities run it through and see if they're plagiarizing, right? Well, the students are actually taking an old paper, like say from your frat buddy, right, who did the class 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and they'll actually have it translated. Well, they'll two ways, right? They run it 2 ways, right? They'll actually run it through Gen AI to rewrite it, but keep all the same tenets, concepts, things like that. And then they translate it into Chinese,
Hmm.
right? And it translates their paper into Chinese. And then they take that and translate it back. Sometimes at the Chinese level, they'll try to do a rewrite there too,
Hmm.
and then export out again. And you're talking literally in like 15 minutes. It won't sound the same after you run it through the Chinese translator twice for
Hmm.
English to Chinese, right? So what did you just do? You just gave the ideas for the secret, right?
Yeah.
If there was one in there, and you put it directly into they didn't even have to translate anymore. It's way within the characters, right? So, every research assistant definitely should not be doing that if you're working on a sponsored project from the
Right.
company, right?
Right.
But that's how sophisticated, the students are here for getting around that aspect. A little less risk for espionage, but, certainly just feeding everything out there into the web, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, like personally, right, use generative AI for research all the time, and like a great example of it is, if I'm trying to hire somebody, right, and I want to know what their current benefits are, if they're working for a big enough company, all that
Hmm.
information is out there, and I can get a pretty good idea of what their total benefits package is going to look like, and then. Do with that information what you will, right? Like, how do I need to rework the offer to make sure that we're competitive when I know that we're or and I know we have not as good of a package, or if we have a better package, like how can I, can I pay them a little bit less as a result, because we're getting more benefits, things like that. But like that gives you a really good idea from a competition, like, from a competitive nature of how to
Hmm.
actually go about using this stuff for research to figure out what's out there, because all that information is out there, and if it's not on the public forward-facing internet, it's it can be in places that are still forward-facing but not easily accessed, what have you, and absolutely super easy to go out and get a profile what these large organizations are offering.
Yeah, so I mean, what you just said right there was something you and I were BSing about a while ago, and that
Mhm.
was negotiation between countries.
Mhm.
And anytime you have more information,
Yeah.
uh, you're probably more successful in the negotiation, right? And getting what you want, or at least fully understanding, right? So you can cut a deal faster, right? As an example, maybe, right? But to your exact point, whether it's industrial espionage and I'm going to cut a deal with another company to produce the thing I want, or I know what the other margins, or where they don't have access to places, if I can use misinformation, right, about instability in a company through, X and Twitter and Facebook and everything else and create perceptions, right? That can change the negotiation as well. I can collect all that data and scrape it, right? And then I can actually get ideas for what to do with it, right? But yeah, it drastically impacts negotiations, right? Whether that be individual level or whether that be country to country level. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and um, so how are what are some of the big misconceptions you see around, leaders and executives in companies, as it relates, specifically, around data sovereignty, right?
Um,
And
so
what
I
does
think
it mean? People understand what that actually means.
yeah, so let's start back with, for the executives, we're talking AI, Gen AI. It's either one, it is so extreme. Almost everyone is extreme with doom. It's either doom or gloom or that's it, right? It's going to solve all the problems. And why isn't this one button? Or we bought it, don't you just click one button and it gives you the answer, right? So fallacy number one is it's going to take over and kill us and destroy it all, right? Maybe eventually, maybe someday. There's some really really cool podcasts out there to listen to about that. But for the most part, you're pretty much good for at least 10 years, right? I think we're safe for a while before the Matrix hits us, right? So what you can't do for those companies is you can't not acknowledge the efficiencies,
Mhm.
right? And countries are the same way too, as they're working to make super intelligence. Like it's like, hey, this may be the thing that takes us over, but we can't not have the edge against another country that's got super intelligence that you don't even know that you're playing in the game and you're a pawn in the game, or even that you're losing the game because the super intelligence is so good it's manipulating you, right? So they can't afford not to play the game, right? Um, and so the first thing is the executive that's, hey, we are not doing this. I'm scared of it. It's going to take the world. It's going to crash. It's going to be no good. You probably can't afford to not play in the game and
Mhm.
not be competitive, right? So that's A. So if you don't understand anything about technology down selection and being able to look at technology, evaluate technology, took a really cool course from Stanford just in digital transformation to zero in on that, right? It was pretty enlightening. The other executive is, yeah, it's going to solve all my problems, right? Hardware more important than people, right? Buy it, right? Or yep, it's going to accelerate everything, solve all my problems. It's not quite there yet, right? This is people enabling, right?
Mhm.
And that's where we go back to. I mean, we can tell something's written by generative AI. When we're in the proposal industry, we write for compliance. Does it meet all the requirements of the government? Is it complete? Did we answer all those? And
Mhm.
then is it compelling? It's not going to make it compelling, right? It's just not going to have that finish, right? And that's where the research is inside a lot of the AI is getting the data or assimilating and collecting the data. The AI is really, really good at. We're just now starting to cross the threshold of simulation or improving that. And I think you can go back to there's a lot of pictures that people have seen. Like we'll take AI a year ago with pictures or making a picture, say it was Kate Modelbrook, right? When she was sick and they were hiding it up and there was issues with the pictures.
Mhm.
A few months later after they caught that, those pictures are perfect now when people are,
Yeah.
modifying pictures, right? So the AI is developing very, very fast to be
Mhm.
able to simulate better. But the bottom line is only people are still making something compelling and doing the finish, right? So executives needs to realize it's not a one button solution. And it's probably, or the way I like to think about it and the way we think about it when we're doing consulting for a proposal process is we say, okay, map out your whole process. Now let's find the four spots that we think are you have your lowest productivity on, that are your most painful, most costly. And then as we're evaluating or making our own criteria to down select into a product, we're actually down selecting to really solve like three or four things in the process, not make a final outcome for you, but solve those things, which is going to get you better productivity, right? Great ROI on the tech investment. And that's probably how you still need to look at it. It's somewhere in the middle of those two executive extremes, right?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. I think, first the rate at which AI has improved, specifically generative AI has improved over the last, it's what, 2025 now, 2.5 years. Yeah, because it was at 22 when end of 22 when ChatGPT was at 3 or 3.5 came out
Yeah.
to the public, right? The rate of change has been incredible, like
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. Uh, and not just on the text generation, but you're right, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
For picture generation, but video generation as well is incredible, right? It's just been incredible. Like when you look at, what it was able to do 2 years ago, and I've seen some crazy videos, right, of like, one of Will Smith eating spaghetti. And that was, I don't know if you saw that one. It was like they did a side by I saw a side by side of AI generated videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and one year it was like you couldn't even tell it was Will Smith really, and he was all like
Yeah.
misproportioned, and he was crazy. But then the next year it was like pretty damn good. It's like, oh yeah, no, like this the rate at which it has been able to change is incredible. I
Yeah.
also, but I think that do you think that that pace is going to continue forward from where we are now? Where do you think
Yeah,
we
I think
went
I
on?
think the pace is going to continue, and because it's convenience, right? So we'll take one step back to you mentioned data sovereignty, right? And when
Mhm,
I go back to data sovereignty, similar to where I think we're going to be with the conveniences of AI, it comes down to the individual choices and level, right? And we'll start like before maybe the tech era here, the last 30 years, right? Food, like, right? They made food really tasty, right?
mhm,
And it's great. And the human literally can't control himself, right? And you eat too much and you're overweight, and then you have health problems. Like you're literally making a choice every day. And if you take this example, or you can kind of understand that in your mind, right? And you take that into data sovereignty, what about the conveniences of Amazon?
mhm,
Right? The convenience of it. Or if I pay with a credit card at Walmart, even, right?
mhm,
And I love the fact that when I type in something, it knows what I think. Or like my Roomba, who makes more money off data sales than they do off of the actual device because it maps your house and they sell it to furniture stores. Like,
mhm,
yep, that layout, they could use an end table on this side. Oh, they're clearing out a room. They're both, 26. They're having a baby. Start sending them the flyers for, stuff to retrofit the room for the baby, right? And you kind of like that convenience that it kind of knows, right? But what you're giving up is a little bit of data sovereignty, and I could be like giving away a lot more money or buying way more than I need, just like I'm eating more than I need. I'm not saving money for retirement for my kids' college, right? I'm making an active choice. And then, you throw on one more piece of that, and almost like, when cigarettes were addictive, right?
still
So
are. They still are addictive for
still
the
are.
yeah. No,
So
it's not they were addictive thing.
yeah, yeah. So I'll take mine then. I maybe don't know cigarettes that well, but I'll say like Hershey bars, right? Like,
Mhm,
dang it, they made it so sugary and tasty, right? Like
yeah.
they're still addictive to me, right?
Mhm.
Right. And so when you have the dopamine hit of you see something you like, and I can hunt and gather, right? That from Amazon quickly, when you take that and it's on Facebook every time you get the like ping going off and you're getting the dopamine drop, right? We've kind of turned some of this into a drug, and you're willing to give up data sovereignty at the individual level for
Mhm.
some of these other reasons,
Yeah.
convenience, and for, at a physical dopamine drug-like level, right? That you don't even know, most people don't even realize is happening to them, right? Because they don't understand the science behind it.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of my major problems with social media at large is that it is actually addictive, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
be clear. Bottom line, like, you can like heroin, right? But the reason you get addicted is because of the dopamine rush. There's physical symptoms, right? But like, it's the dopamine associated with it. That's the thing that you can really only get. That's like the main driver in our brain. It's the main pleasure center in our brain, I believe. That it's what I
Yeah.
think. At least. People don't know that like you're getting like they literally have algorithms looking at your behavior to make sure that you're engaged and keep serving you the content that you want to see so that you will keep looking at it, right? Because
Yeah.
they're selling your attention is exactly it. They get paid
Yeah.
serving ads to you, and they know what ads to serve you based on how you interact with their platform. Right. And that's like that, and for folks like in Western countries, like or in the US specifically, it hasn't been great, right? Let's be clear, it hasn't been great, but certainly hasn't gone as poorly as it went in Myanmar in
Mhm.
2017, when, Facebook was deployed there for the first time and their, algorithms directly contributed to an ethnic cleansing that happened, right? And
Yeah,
so in a society that is not media literate, like is less media literate than the US,
yeah,
having access to this directly led to a lot of people dying, right? I think it's led to
yeah,
a lot of people dying elsewhere. And so that's why, as having young kids, like my daughter's not going to be on social media. Absolutely not. I don't even like her being posted on pictures of her being posted on social media. Um,
mhm.
and frankly, Josh, the thing that I like most about Amazon is at this point is the fact that I never have to go to a store to find a weird battery shape. Like that's the main thing that I like, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure you've had it too, where your kid hands you a toy and it's like, I need a new battery, Daddy. It's like, oh, what is this? It's a round one. I know I don't have this. Let's go. Perfect. It'll be here in a day and a half, right? But that's the extent of it. I
yeah,
don't like this. That's for me personally. I also just don't like to, like, I don't buy random widgets all the time to keep more shit in the house just to have it in the house. Like, you know, you, you need a random battery, something like that. Awesome for it, right? It's cheaper
yeah,
than some things in other ways, but I've been working on breaking my dependence on that level of convenience, because
yeah.
grow up with it, you get used to it.
Yeah, or is it they have the control, or at least you're being manipulated, or is it convenience? And that's where it becomes really tricky on governing. It's almost different for everybody. Similar to the industrial espionage. Why haven't we solved it yet? Because one corporation wants to handle it this way, another one wants to handle it this way. It's like no one can get aligned. I mean, I'm not saying that I want this because my 10-year-old daughter would like cut my Achilles heels in her night. She's terrifying. But what if social media for kids was just like alcohol, age 21 or age 18 for cigarettes, right? Like, if we're not going to protect, do we need to protect our kids? Like, do we need to protect people that don't care about or don't understand it? Like, do they understand the science of the drug hits? This just comes about. I think there's probably a need for someone where all should be responsible, but maybe it's government to do more education on social media and what's happening to you on the internet and your brain on the internet, and how you're being preyed upon. Like that should be like a mandatory class, right? Growing up in high school, right? Or probably junior high at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but like civics should be too, and I don't know if that's taught everywhere either. So like, there's a lot of things that should be like, and like,
Yeah,
science, like true science, like without the influence of like things like religion should be taught as well. But like that's also a case by a state by state basis, and sometimes a county by county basis. They want to do it differently,
yeah,
which frankly brings me to the point that I don't like when you have a larger societal problem. That's when I think the government has the duty to step in, right? And you can look at things like defense. That's a great spot, right? We as a society, because like when this country was founded, there was no standing army, right? We didn't have one. I think we had a standing navy, but we was all militia based, which is why the Second Amendment is, specifically there's that nice line about militia written into there because, that's where that came from because we didn't have the army, so we needed to have a well-regulated militia, so we needed to have people with guns, right? Which has led to other issues, right? I don't care what side of you're on, the gun debate you're on, there's other issues there related to access to weapons. But like defense, like the government looked and said, oh, you know what? We probably need a standing army based on where we are and what we're doing. And, we collectively pay in to have an army that, and now it's pay in to have a defense industrial complex as well. So you look something like that, like roads, another great one. Like you need to get from point A to point B. They need to be roads. That should be the government's job. Absolutely. You can debate about which road is handled by which level of the government, but that's there. Same thing with education. And this is like, frankly, in my opinion, the IP theft is a matter of maintaining our, geopolitical position in the world.
mm,
Which frankly is like, who cares what the companies think? They're not going to stop doing business. They're not going to like move their headquarters elsewhere and stop doing business here because we are require some collective, collective, some working together and some collaboration to ensure that the secrets that they are paying and the government is paying to have, developed these new technologies to have them be stolen by folks and just reused.
Yeah. Well, and so coming full circle back to, IP theft here, which is kind of what folks say, is consequences, right?
Mhm.
So we don't have a system to find police what we're going to do with the individuals. But if those individuals are reporting back to either a government or other companies, right? Probably a mix of both government sponsored companies, right? There's got to be consequences. And so there's no clear consequences. Those countries probably don't care about the individuals either if they get policed up and thrown in jail for 30 years. There's got to be consequences back to the state, and that's tied to anything, right? You can't I think everybody's scared of the trade, and I'll give you an example of I was in this is a little bit of offshoot here, but I was in a U.S. embassy and I was talking with some I was a special operations commander over there chatting to people, and I was talking with some staffers, right? And they're Ivy League, very, very educated, very focused. And we were talking about China. They're like, we'll never go to war with China. We're too economically tied. It'll just never happen that way. And I was like, I don't know about this. So, and I heard it like six embassies across Asia. It's very clearly a thing in state. And so I went and I just did the most basic economic analysis I could do. I looked at export data, and I looked at export data going back to 2020, right, to the US and our exports to them, right? That's a key piece as well. And you saw that our percentage, US percent of US exports to them were about 22% in 2000. And when I traced it by 2022, it was dropping by 0.5% a year, right? So we're talking like 2018, we were already down to 10%. And China's domestic spending, right? GDP overall was going up. It's not even exports, right? So you're below 10% of their less of their economy. This is a country that I saw shut off factories in Beijing for 6 weeks to clean up the air for a global leaders summit, right? And too bad, no jobs for 6 weeks, right?
Yep.
Like once they get that below 10%, taking an 8% hit to destroy us, right? Or destroy our economy, is something they very much can flip a switch on and do, right?
Oh yeah.
So bring this back to consequences. What are the consequences going to be when we catch or we identify 1,000 people committing industrial espionage in country and companies in the US? What is the response back to the government going to be, right? Then do you put tariffs in place? Do you put fines in place? Do you throw out companies, right? There has to be a consequence because right now, for 20 years, they've been taking with no consequence, just pushing the line, right? And this maybe comes back to communication, right? And consequent, if I was going to tell like president, Congress, probably the president being the lead, I give him one advice, hey, we got to establish the consequence, but more importantly, maybe before you can say consequence, which could disrupt people's lives, you have to communicate the threat,
Hmm.
right? You have to communicate, hey, we've got these 1,000 people. This one here, they have just stolen planes to our next advanced fighter. Now it can be shot down. $10 billion of R&D gone. Your tax dollars, 10 billion wasted, right? Boom. Hey, this one right here. This is a drug company that spent $20 billion to make a drug. They've got all these employees, right? They're going to go out of business because somebody's going to replicate them, get around the trademarks, get around the patenting, produce it right over there, and they stole the patents of the drug, right? 10 billion, 100 billion down the drain, US jobs down the drain. They've got to communicate. And I think a lot of times we don't want the American population riled up to want to take action, but I think we haven't been honest about the amount of exploitation that other countries have done to us in our years of benevolence, right? And you got to communicate before you throw the consequence, otherwise it's going to look crazy, right?
I completely agree with you, and I think that the lack of understanding about the consequences associated with this for us as a country at a in on the global stage, something I wasn't super educated about until relatively recently. I was doing a lot of reading for prepping up for this podcast and this conversation, and I think that communicate it, tell them, but to your point about hearing the folks at state saying that we're never going to go to war to China because for economic reasons. I'm not sure if you know, Josh, but right before, like in the years preceding World War One, there were a huge amount of scholars coming out saying that there's no way that we're ever going to go to have a global scale at the, a global conflict at the scale of the Napoleonic Wars ever again. We're too interconnected and too dependent economically on each other, and there's so much prosperity that there's no reason that we're ever going to go fight. And if we do, it's going to be a short war because as soon as people run out of liquid assets, everybody's going to stop spending and we're just going to go home. But like uh, nobody has ever stopped a hot war for economic reasons, right? You just borrow money and you make it happen. Um, and I first agree that it's not that there's never no way that we're going to go to war with China. I don't think that at the same time I don't think it's inevitable. Um, and I think that there's a lot of places in between those two extremes. Um, but yeah, I think that I completely agree. We need to do a better job of communicating what's going on, the consequence, the direct, impact to us as a country, and yeah, and establish those consequences and move from there.
Yeah. You don't want to the point where it's breaking, right?
Hmm.
You don't want zero consequences for your kid all the way to the point where, they're 22 years old and, you haven't held them accountable for anything and, they're on the streets or something, right? It's way too late, right? You pushed it way too far. They're committing crime, they're going to jail, right? So you can't get to the breaking point. Pressing back now is probably a right path to move for that. I personally don't think we're ever going to go to war with China either, but that's because they are using dime so well and orchestrating that. We'll be in a position where we can't, right? After you don't have the economics, after you don't have the network, right? After you don't have some of the influence capabilities, right? Very, very quickly, and economics to military, right? You just won't. Like we won't, but then we'll just be taking advantage of you more, right? Because we don't have the capacity, right? So we'll be outmaneuvered before it would ever come to a head. Or I think that's the biggest risk is once you're outmaneuvered and you can't win and they're taking advantage of you with that bully and there's nothing else that you can do when they're actually bigger than us. Most Americans probably don't even know they have a larger economy than us now, right? But once you're bigger and you're being bullied, you either completely submit or the kid getting bullied's got to go nuclear and like start like swinging. And then it's us that starts it, right? And it turns into, World War III, all bad. So stopping the stem of being bullied now, right? Conditioning that person to they can't treat you that way, having consequence, I think is the best aversion for security in the future, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up, Josh?
No, no, I really appreciate rapping with you today, and it's always a pleasure. Happy to get on with you anytime. Thanks for bringing some of these topics up to everybody around.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time today. And everybody listening, thanks for listening to Robots and Red Tape. I hope you're having a great day.